And tonight, some really intense Doctor Who debate that will get you behind the sofa.
Hello, it's Children in Need Night, 25th of November 1983. And we were all, well, if you were alive, of course, you were all tuning into Doctor Who, a feature-length episode. And boy, were we lucky to see that. And what a mishmash of the greatest hits of Doctor Who, you could say, from Daleks going down corridors and all the rest of it going on. A cyber battle, a cyber massacre, the Yeti were there, loads of companions, evening cameo, lots and lots going on. It had a bit of everything. And actually, one of the reviewers said about it, a fine anniversary tale, although don't analyse the plot too closely, as it's largely a collection of set pieces without a great deal of substance. This is Terence Dix's loving tribute to a series that he helped to mould, and as such, contains everything that it should. Hi, panel. 5 Doctors.
Yay!
I bet when I picked this one, did you go, oh, God, I'm dreading it? No. How did you... Michelle, how many times have you seen this?
I think I'm up to 4 or 5 now.
Yeah.
I did jazz hands.
And Hugh, were you there at the time watching it?
Yeah, so this is the first time that Mr. Daly and I discovered that we were both fans.
Oh, okay.
It's the night running up to this, and we were both intending to watch it. And like John had come up to university in October of 1983, and sort of like we debated and stuff like that. But sort of like that was the first conversation about Doctor Who.
And then it's a lifelong friendship since. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
We have all our usual items, so stick with us, everybody. We do have What Would the Shooty Doctor Do? My God, it keeps me busy tonight. He might have liked the Raston Rory Robot if he looked like that. No, with his booty. My God, you did see everything, I must admit. So we've got Do Not Disturb Sutekh. We've obviously got the Intimacy Watch. I take my job very seriously as a custodian of Classic Who. And of course, as you know, when we do our reviews, we try and keep the favoritism to a minimum, instead of people just saying why they liked everything because it was one of their key ones. We look at 3 criteria. Is it true Who or boo Who? Does it protect canon, character, and everything? We look obviously at the production resources used, because you can waste them. And of course, did it engage you and did have a suitable resolution? So we'll give you our judgment at the end, and then we'll get rocking and rolling. So it is the 5 Doctors. So Brian, how many times have you seen 5 Doctors?
Oh boy. Well, I saw the first transmission here in North America, which actually was a surprise to me. I didn't even know it was coming. So I also remember when I saw it, it was quite late here. It was in the fall of 87 for some reason. At least that's when I saw it. And I remember vividly because I had gone to the emergency room the night before for reasons that I will not disclose here. So there was the initial broadcast, and then the VHS, and then every special edition that came afterwards. And then every time I've decided just to pop it in for some good old fun. So I honestly can't remember. It's probably been over a dozen times now.
It is one of those. I mean, I've seen people say they're disappointed with it because actually Tom Baker's not in it. You just get the waxwork really and a tiny bit from Sharda. So of course, it's a bit of a dodgy one, it being the 5 Doctors. But we'll look later at the notes where it was going to be the 6 Doctors with Robert Holmes until things changed. But I find it. B&M have all the dolls and all the rest of it, and I'm just thinking this is like a B&M extravaganza, and also the product placement. It sounded like the Tomb of Rassilon, the Harp of Rassilon, the Ring of Rassilon. I mean, my God, you could have done a range on QVC. It seems to me, absolutely. You know, every kind of proper noun you could think of. So, what's your big highlight? I mean, just before we really get going, because Sutekh is sleeping, and I need to remind you that there's problems with this. So, Hugh, your big highlight and takeout from 5 Doctors.
I think the point about the plot is absolutely correct. So you don't go for the plot; you go for a nice feeling of a sort of Christmassy extravaganza, and that's what it is. It's got enough in it that it zips by pretty much. I do have some problems with it, but I think one thing I'll take from it is that in terms of reacting with the other Doctors, Peter Davison is very, very good in this.
And that was a big tester, wasn't it? Because I was warming to Peter Davison as a picky 12, 13-year-old. You know, you can never please us. And Tom Baker had just left, and I was trying to work out this more blander version of the Doctor, I thought. But he stands his own in this one, big time. But we might discuss all that later. Michelle, your big takeout from this.
This is a reunion show done well. This should be the gold standard of how Doctor Who celebrates its anniversaries. And also how lucky you guys were to have this many Doctors together in one show.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Longleat as well, because I saw them all there. Brian, same question?
Yeah, it was seeing all the Doctors together, but also like Jon Pertwee was my first Doctor, just bits and pieces of his last series. So seeing Patrick Troughton was really exciting. I knew that wasn't William Hartnell, but seeing Patrick Troughton, that was a big, big deal for me. Enjoyed that.
There was so much, I have to say, and we will break it down, of course we will, but just before we get into our Sutekh complication, we got the brand new TARDIS interior, and he had his Mr. Sheen on it, and he was cleaning it like a good, kind of cleaner. We had only the second pre-credits sequence. First one was Castrovalva, and of course you got William Hartnell. So, you know, they call it the 5 Doctors. Tom Baker, yeah, it's a bit iffy. The first Doctor's actually, the actor's dead, but they've replaced him. But it was nice to see the original. And actually, it's a lovely speech, actually. And I had not seen that speech, obviously, because I don't think that video was out. So, of course, it was a great surprise to see William Hartnell doing a kind of Churchillian speech, then seeing the brand new TARDIS interior. I mean, what a start. So yeah, but I have to kill the mood, because it depended on who you are. Some classic fans say they can deny that Davros has been retconned and they can watch Genesis and there's no problem, but I know it's there. So of course I am concerned about how things have been changed by a certain custodian of the show, and he has really screwed it up regarding Sutekh. So here we go. Yes, Sutekh is part of this retcon. You can deny it all you want, but I like to apply the logic of our great RTD showrunner, because if he's such a genius, then the logic will stick. So, of course, Hugh, you mentioned this before we even started the stream. So what problems were you seeing with the Sutekh logic?
Well, so apart from anything that happens, obviously you've got 4 TARDISes all in one, and he's on top of one, but doesn't go with the others. How does he know not to go with the others? Why is there not 4 Suteks at that point? It just seems to me. I mean, Russell obviously had spent no time thinking about this whatsoever, but he's got to go. Oh, look, there's more. There's an opportunity to spread myself about more. Surely.
Yeah, I mean, did this Time Lord process? I mean, this is naughty Barusa. Did he? Because he thought, oh, I'll give you a villain to play with. You know, he had that kind of, apparently that's what his great wheeze was. I'll put you in the death zone and I'll give you a villain and all the rest of it. However, did he accidentally create 4 Suteks, which would have been lethal? I mean, I love them on there because, yeah, there's that lovely bit at the end when the TARDISes split off and go off to their different. And I managed to grab 2. And of course, there's Sutekh clinging on going, what the hell? Really, it should have been a bloodbath, really, which is he splits in 2, 3, 4.
And why didn't he reveal himself? I mean, it's all the great villains of the Doctor causing problems in the Death Zone.
Well, it takes me back to the gunpowder plot. I mean, was he going to be hummed, drawn, and quartered? I mean, you know, shoo, shoo, shoo. So yes, RTD, I'm just pointing out, you know, you say you stay up till 2 a.m. deciding on whether the script should have not, but, or yet in. Actually, you should have thought that one through. And really, don't be flippant. I hate flippancy in somebody who's supposed to be applying logic. What about this one then? He must have been bored rigid in the eye of Orion. I mean, who cares? I mean, he was probably sat there going, God, Turlough's doing art. I was like, how boring is this? I want to kill people.
He was sleeping.
I think
he was getting bombarded by positive ions.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's surely a literal wet weekend in Wales, all of this.
Yes.
He's up there doing yoga poses.
He's very good, yeah. He's very good. But this is it, Hugh, with the wet weekend in Wales type of thing. You saw the TARDIS interior, you had the William Hartnell pre-credits, and then you saw Wales. And to be honest, as a kid, wanting all this 5 Doctors chaos, I was thinking, oh, that looks like, I mean, I didn't know it was Wales. I was thinking, is that the Lake District? Is that Scotland? And, you know, when he said it's the eye of Orion and there's Turlough doing a painting, I'm thinking, this isn't exciting me. That bit kind of is a bit, go away, get on with it, kill somebody, please. And I think Sutekh at that point was asleep. But there was another complication. Here we go again. I mean, we had the Sharda police box, and of course, is he stuck in the time, Eddy? You know, was Sutekh?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Oh, you know, RTD. He is a super fan. He knows all this in his sleep, but he couldn't be bothered to think about it. And we've done it with every review, and I will stick at it because one day I will just kind of send all of these to the BBC and say, "Look, away." Send
the Bad Wolf. Yeah, here you go.
When you think, though, when you actually think of that shot and you think, that's our Tom Baker. I mean, you got him on the floor underneath some sort of boring car park, you know, fence. And you've been waiting for the 5 Doctors and you got the bit in at the university and that was it. And you think, you were selling a bit of a dud there on the Tom Baker front. But yes, Sutekh, was he sleeping? Was he awake? He was certainly, I think, conflicted by what was going on. So, naughty. RTD.
How about this then? The reason why the Time Eddy gets created is because they can't have 2 Sutekhs in the one place.
Yeah, it's too much. You know, when your computer can't upload too much, and it kind of crashes. Maybe the time vortex that actually he was manipulating, Barusa, it just couldn't cope with the memory.
Yeah, it's not shadow, it's buffer.
Yeah, yes. Tom Baker was buffering. That's the plot line. It just wouldn't sound as good.
They had bad Wi-Fi, so it was like buffering. Buffering. They're out of Wales, so they had bad. You know.
It would have been terrible if Barusa was told. Imagine if Barusa was told by his technician, "You need to reboot. You need to start again." What? I've got them all hidden in a room behind there. Right. Okay, then. The notables. There's quite a few with the 5 Doctors, aren't there? We can take our pick with a few. So here we go. it introduced that the Time Lords can grant a regeneration cycle because they offered it to the Master. Liz Sladen hated going down that embankment because it looked rubbish. Caroline Ford, for the same reason, hated being told she had to trip on her own ankle like some idiot. Why do they always do that in Doctor Who? Oh, I've tripped on my ankle. Yes, Adric, we know in the Visitation. We all know, I'm sure, Robert Holmes was going to write the 6 Doctors, and it was going to be a robot imposter as one of the Doctors. Spelling mistake there. Gosh, I was typing too fast. The Cybermen would have been trying to be Cyberlords. Oh, aye, does that sound like anything? The Australian ABC were co-producers with 60,000. The 4th Doctor would have betrayed the others. Terence Dix felt that the Cybermen were overused by Eric Saywood, and because obviously he rewrote it a bit, and Dix fought for the inclusion of a Dalek. The script is explicit that Davison is the 5th Doctor, so, you know, stick that in your pipe, Chris Chibnall. The Quarks were set to return, but in the end were replaced by the Raston Warrior robot. Sarah was to arrive in the Death Zone with the ruins of a high street and some Auton mannequins, but it was going to be. I'm an English teacher, but I can just see loads of typos because I must have been going too fast. The first story to air as a single episode since Mission to the Unknown. Richard Hurndall was supposed to walk across that chessboard trap in a zigzag. He didn't. I didn't understand why he just walked across, because where was the pie there? Ben, Polly, Ian, Sergeant Benton, Victoria, Joe, Harry were to appear at some points.
Oh.
I know. Louise Jameson wanted to be in it, but they wouldn't put her in. Lalla Ward refused. Boris Hussein was going to be the first choice of director, but he was busy. K9 was minimal in the story because Terence Dix just did not enjoy writing for him. Keith Hodiak, who played the Raston Warrior robot, went to the loo and left a urine stain on his Raston Warrior robot costume and had to have it dried with a hairdryer. So much for being invincible, eh? And John Nathan Turner wished he regretted after this story because that was one of his plans. By gosh, it's a busy one, isn't it? I mean, it's a Raston Warrior robot. He's gone to the loo and he's come back and they said, look, we have to get a hairdryer on that one.
Well,
because
to be fair, you know, it's hard to have a zipper in those costumes.
It is. And
you gotta go. And from what I understood of filming out there, it was miserable because they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, Brian, is there any take from that list or some other little nuggets you heard of the 5 Doctors?
Well, only the one that we all know, that Tom turned it down and then regretted it years later. So that's the real shame, is that he actually changed his mind, but too late. There were some enemies like the Sontarans, and there may have been one more that I was hoping
Ice
would have
Warriors.
An Ice Warrior would have been neat, because I hadn't seen an Ice Warrior at the time. No. So that would have been interesting. But yeah, the Sontarans, I think, were a big miss. But the makeup that it takes to do an individual mask for, they could have only done one. Otherwise you end up with the junk ones that you got in the 2 Doctors. Those were terrible. They have to be made specifically for each actor. So yeah, but other than that, no, it's interesting, all these little tidbits. Oh, why was the Autons left out? Another big missed opportunity. And Leela, would have loved to have seen Leela again.
She would have been married to one of the commanders, so I don't know what she would have. It added so many complications. Yeah. Obviously, Harry and all of these people, but in a way,
she could have just killed and divorced him.
I know it was nice because Jon Pertwee's wage was quite high, and he had to take a pay cut because it was testing their budget, and of course he wanted to be in it, so he did that. But you just wonder, if you got a sprinkling of all those companions and even more monsters, whether it would have started to feel even then. I mean, it's a simple plot, but it would have frayed a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think it would have been nice to have levers longer to have them all in there, but then sometimes it's turning into the cameo of the week club.
Yeah, because there were 4 cameos, and that was sad enough, wasn't it? I think the worst thing about the cameos, apart from I'm sure they like being back on, of course, but they weren't playing themselves, were they?
I know. Fraser Hines wanted to be more involved, but he was filming Emmerdale, and they wouldn't allow him off time, so he had to come off on his day off to drive all the way to where they filmed that just to be in it.
He was going to be the one, the second Doctor, and so it would have changed the Brigadier with the third Doctor, Sarah with the fourth Doctor, and it would have all balanced it all up. But it's an interesting one because it was Children in Need. I always got the impression it had a bigger audience, but it was 7.7 million for Friday night, which I don't think it sounds the most amazing.
I think that's okay for a Friday night. I don't think Friday nights have ever been the big night for British television. Saturday nights, and Sunday nights because people are in. I think Friday night you're always going to lose something, and the very fact that it's within Children in Need, which God knows I can never watch anyway. So
I know what you mean. Although Friday nights to me in the 70s, Hugh, was Just on Frontier.
I still think at that stage you're not hitting the 10 and 12 millions quite so frequently.
Yeah. So there you go. That just so we've got the facts there, and of course the cast list goes on forever, but I can show that eventually later. Look, I've got one key question though to start off with, and it is a key one. I think it has to be asked. I can't just say, "Oh, 5 Doctors, is everybody happy about it?" I think we've got to ask the fair question. So here we go. So my question, of course, is, did it deliver? Because in essence, I would say a lot of season 1 with RTD2 is not delivering. Okay. And so if we're going to judge it in another way, did it deliver? Did it give us, a version of Doctor Who as an anniversary special? Did it work? That's what we're going to be looking at. So Tom Baker wasn't in it. There were some cameos that were very, very brief. The Yeti was kind of just a claw, really, and a quick scene. And so the Dalek down some token corridor, stupid enough to fire in a reflective space. I mean, they used to be scientists, these Daleks. Now they're idiots. So
there's always one. There's always one that's an idiot.
There is always one. So, Michelle, knowing that we're probably going to praise in various ways, but did it deliver on an anniversary special? Did it hold?
Compared to some of the other anniversary specials, and especially what we got for the 60th, it's even better than the 50th. This does hold as what a gold standard for a anniversary show could be, should be, and has never been replicated.
Okay, I know some people think the 60th, I apologize, the 50th, the Day of the Doctor, that Stephen Moffat, having learned from this in a way, decided to go more story focus and less trying to do this, that, and the other. So, of course, the great cameo was the curator. So
you want nostalgia in an anniversary episode. You want to see the characters that you've loved. Story is always very little to do in an anniversary episode. It's nostalgia. It's seeing those familiar faces again.
Brian, what are you thinking about this one? I mean, it's an open question. Did it deliver?
At the time I saw it, definitely. Just disappointed that Tom wasn't there. That was my only major disappointment. No Tom.
Yeah.
Looking at it now, it's got faults, but again, I just miss Tom. I just wish Tom had been there with everybody else.
And I know it's an issue, isn't it? Because he doesn't want to be typecast. Of course he doesn't. And he just done a very long stint as the Doctor. So I totally get it. Except how many times does he think this was going to ever happen? I mean, if you look at history, you look at moments, weddings and funerals and everybody's family. If you miss some of these moments, there's no repeat. So, of course, maybe he obviously thought typecasting was much more dangerous to him than missing out on this one-off event. Hugh, did it deliver as an anniversary?
Yeah, I mean, I think it delivers almost purely and only as an anniversary. It's very boxed in what it is. I think part of it, we'll get on to some of the problems later. Part of it is I know there's very little plot, but there's almost too much about Rassilon in it that unbalances later stuff. That's possibly my worry about it. If you start looking at what is included there, it all gets a bit, what on earth's going on? But it's just sort of like a Christmas pudding, surely.
Yes, I got, yeah, I know we'll mention it in a suitable item, but I did think we were getting a bit too much Time Lordy corruption and bits and bobs, and it was almost like a kind of police drama or detective drama on blooming Gallifrey, when actually I wanted action. Get me back to that Yeti cave, give me the Raston Rory robot, give me the Dalek, all the rest of it. Instead we had the Dark Scrolls and one baddie, but he wasn't. He was the red herring. Then another one, and
the other aspect to that, and as far as my understanding is, I don't think there's anything that Turn 6 was deliberately doing, but just in terms of the fact that writers reflect culture, is it feels very video game.
Yes, yes. Oh well, I mean, it looked like a top level video game, didn't it, with the BBC computer when when you go top, middle, or below. I mean, that was whoa. And when I think the Richard Hurndall Doctor could see in the TARDIS and say, "Oh look, that mind you, he looked so angry when he said, 'My God, there's three.' There's three of me, and where's the other one? I wonder what happened to the other." And he says it in such a horrible way. I wonder what happened to the other. You'd be bothered, wouldn't you? I mean, there's poor Peter Davison having cosmic angst, and there's the Doctor going, "Where the hell's the other one?" Kick it off. Yes, that might have been a problem. So, but we did get the 4. We did get the 4 there. I'm just showing you. I mean, we had the cyber attack.
And we also get some blooper reels, which are classic in this. The blooper reels are
the
blooper reels.
Yes.
Where can we see those bloopers?
They were on the special edition on the Blu-ray. There's some great ones. Peter Davison cussing, which is great. A couple times where people are missing their marks. A Dalek being over dramatic is hysterical.
That one I've seen. That one's the classic. Wow.
Jon Pertwee, obviously, Troughton not knowing his lines. Yeah.
Getting mad. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Pertwee and Troughton are going over their lines.
Yeah, because
Nicholas Courtney missing his mark.
I've got a photograph later. You can see the 3 doctors, as in the first, the second, and the third, and you can see Pertwee with his script out. And at least he knew his lines when he always thought, "Well, Troughton, you're making them up, you're changing them." And he hated that, didn't he? Notorious. But of course, this was, and as you said, Hugh, this is Davison's era, and he held his own. He really did. He wasn't meant to be the one who went to Gallifrey, though. That was the issue. And I did think, since he's the main Doctor, because let's face it, whether it's an anniversary, in the third Doctor, 3 Doctors, Jon Pertwee's Doctor still had to make sure he was doing most of it. In this one, you have Davison is sidelined on Gallifrey, which I thought was a dull choice.
But I think that's you have to put him there, because if he's not there, then he's just one of the other 3 or 4, depending on how you want to define it. But so in terms of that, that's the most important bit, because it's where the bad guy is actually revealed.
And also, he's had drama with the Castellan before Shu and Hori in the beginning of season 20 with Arc of Affinity. So he's had some drama with the Time Lords. In fact, they kind of reference that the Castellan, he goes, he's just blaming me because he blames me for what happened with Omega.
And there was even talk that Colin Baker might have come back to be Maxil just for a second. But anyway, while we're getting all serious about this, about whether Maxil is going to come back and Colin Baker, I think we need to get to the main game again, which is, we can't go too long without you can't ignore or neglect the shooty Doctor. He is a diva Doctor and he does like attention. So I think we need to give him it now. Yes, what would the Ncuti doctor do? And of course, the important thing here is to take a look at this. You look at the fifth doctor and you'd look at the 15th doctor. And what did the Peter Davison doctor say at the very end? I'm definitely not the man I was. And if I look at those two shots, how true, how true.
After Jody's doctor, I giggle at that scene. I was like, oh, yeah, no, doctor.
No wonder he's got cosmic angst. My God. So the first one, of course, is when he's still in Wales and he had a bit of a I don't know, acid reflux.
We've all been there. We've all
been there. Just yeah, have some Gaviscon or something. So anyway, I've got some cosmic angst. I'm being taken apart piece by piece and all the rest of it. Great, fine on the script and all the rest of it, but I just think the setting didn't kind of work for me. But if the 15th Doctor was involved, I think would he be rolling on the floor? Would he be in tears? Would he be shouting? And I think we'd go very expressive. What do you reckon, Brian?
Oh, he had to pick me first. Oh, if it was a different setting, I could have done much better, but oh boy, I can't say really. Maybe come back to me and my brain will come up with something.
Well, he would have. I mean, he would have. I think he would have been such pain he'd have rolled around. Except, I suppose he wouldn't want to get muddy, would he? So I suppose because of all his kind of decent fashioned accessories. So yeah, you've got the cosmic angst there. If anyone wants to bid in, but I've got.
I mean, it would probably be done much more dramatically, and it's not. I don't think this is just shitty. This is how it's written now. It's interesting because I look back at this and think, Davison is doing it much more human than I think the other doctors did to an extent, or humane. But it's still slightly odd. Whereas Ncuti would just be being exactly as if someone had been shot, someone that he loved. So he would be in tears, definitely in tears.
And this was acted enough, let's face it. I mean, as a kid watching it, I was like, oh, God, he's having nasty twinges. It does make me think, though, that when you got the two doctors, that moment when you saw the second doctor who looked as though he was being tortured, remember that little kind of hologram of him that the sixth doctor discovered? Why wouldn't he be having pains then? Because remember, he wasn't sure what had happened to he was worried about the previous doctors and he had no angst. He fell over, didn't he, in the TARDIS? You think of the three doctors and you think of the first doctor being trapped in another time, Eddy, for a while. And then you think, wouldn't there be any angst then? But anyway, maybe.
Well, Davison is the most, up to this point, and it still is one of the most human doctors.
Yes. But still, But
still a doctor. Still recognizably the doctor. You still recognize him as an alien.
Now, with this one, I found this fascinating. When you watch Five Doctors now, I keep thinking, he sees Susan, he sees her silhouette, and he recognizes her silhouette, it seems to me, because he almost says Susan before you see her. And I just wondered if the 15th Doctor would have said, you're everywhere now, love, in season one. There's avatars of you everywhere. Susan twists everywhere. And I kept thinking one of them was you. And I've looked for you everywhere. He doesn't look over the moon, as in, they're hugging everything. But the reunion of the first Doctor with Susan, I thought would have been bigger and more epic than this. So it makes me wonder, by the time the 15th Doctor finds Susan, which it looks as though we're teed up to do, I don't know, they might have to get a room.
Well, also today, you'd be like, oh, you left me, you abandoned me, I'm angry at you, I hate men, blah, 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 blah.
Mind you, I read that they said that in the script, it said she calls him grandfather, and they were going to take that out. But John Nathan Turner said, no way. They were concerned about, the idea of sex and that kind of, and you think, gosh, they were arguing and debating that. Look at now.
I think Caroline Ford said that she had to have that in as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
she refused to do it, and it wouldn't make any sense for her not to do so.
Yeah. And also maybe he's happy that he's seeing her. He's unhappy because he knows that she's been pulled out where she's supposed to be. That he left her behind for to be safe. So something is going on very badly. So while the happiness of this reunion is wonderful, but this is not right.
Well, I must admit,
Ncuti, on the other hand, would be it would be just an utter mess at this point. He'd be happy, he'd be sad, he'd be sort of turning every 5 seconds. It'd be sort of like some form of Tourette's, I suspect.
Well, it's weird because obviously the shooty doctor was in tears when Ruby Sunday went to see her dad. And so he's, you are making me whole. I've grown because of you. Did Susan not do any of this to the first doctor? He's grown quite nicely without her. I have to say, if you really do think of how Doctor Who has treated Susan, I mean, he dumped her on Earth, let's be honest. And if she is a time lady, it's not been said, but if she is a time lady, she was stuck in one time zone. That would be seen as cruel. The third Doctor hated being exiled in one time period. So that was a cruelty factor, leaving Susan on Earth. Now, he's never apparently gone looking for her. And now season 1 was all a ruse to say he has to find her now. Worries me sick what the hell the 15th Doctor's going to say to her. I mean, is this his therapy? I have to say, are we onto something? Is this the healing between the 14th Doctor and the 15th Doctor? He has to find Susan.
Yeah, probably. Probably therapy, motif.
Yes. Well, we had the Dalek, of course, coming down a token corridor. And of course, he came up with a plan, didn't he? It was a genius plan. He says, when I push him down that alley, when I say drop, drop. Now, I think the shooty doctor would have said, what, the trousers? No, I mean,
when I say twerk.
Yeah, twerk or drop your trousers, or, I mean, honestly. By the way, it's a kind of plot hole or a dramatic conceit. Why did he know the Dalek would fire when it goes into a dead end? Why would the Dalek fire at itself?
It's a trigger happy Dalek.
Yeah, I mean, it's very weird because
there's always one that's the idiot. You always have to have the one where it's like the village idiot, where he's going to do something stupid.
I mean, fancy the Doctor. Remember what this genius plan of the first Doctors was: when the Dalek goes past us, just lay on the floor. But if it hadn't fired, they'd have been laid on the floor. It would have turned around and just exterminated them. They wouldn't have got away. Maybe the 15th.
It's the script. It's the plot.
Maybe the 15th Doctor had a better idea to confuse it, going, "I'm on the death zone and you're twerking. Is this appropriate?" But yes,
he started twerking. The Dalek would just fire, just end itself.
Yes, I can't take any more.
Yes, this is it. I've had enough of season 1. Never mind season 2.
Also, was this the first time that you guys saw the interior of a Dalek in his casing?
Squiggling around like that?
Yes, because then you get the resurrection of the Daleks the season after.
So you get a bit of it in The Evil of the Daleks, but it's not wriggling. You just looks a bit messy. I vaguely remember my parents saying that it looked like fish and chips. I'm not quite sure it did, but
with some seasoning on it, it'd be delicious.
But at the end of Evil of the Daleks, when they're fighting one another, you do get to see a bit of the inside. You don't get that amount of exposure as we do here.
And that is impressive.
Well, here's the next one. It was a great moment. I thought Peter Howell's music, as the kind of the bass as he walks into the TARDIS, I thought had a bit of drama to it. Really did. This bit, and to be honest, as I remember watching it, going, "Oh, this is what you want: is a doctor meeting a doctor," and he is the first one. And I'd already seen him on Blue Peter with Peter Davison do a can he pretend not get on with each other before this. So I was really excited to see a cranky first Doctor. Now, when he walked in, of course, he was quite, I don't know, he was quite formal, I thought. But the 15th Doctor, we all know his entrances. honey, babes, give me the loving. Even though the fifth doctor's on the floor, faint, I think he just said, give me the loving, the man's here, you know.
Yeah.
I can see the disco ball coming down and playing just the two of us at that point.
Oh, God. I mean, but again, I feel so
Yeah,
sorry for...
I really do feel we might go to it with the Infant Squadron, but I think there might be some self-loving involved.
Well, let's hope the Planet of the Daleks bed doesn't come out.
What happens in the TARDIS stays in the TARDIS.
Yes, Plane of Skulls. I say the Plane of Skulls every time. Plane of Stones. One more.
I still want to make that into a t-shirt.
Yes, I think it's important too. And here we go again. The Raston Rory robot. I mean, this was genius. I know it was supposed to be a quark, but actually, and I know it is really just a kind of silvered up android from Earthshock. It's the same costume. However, great. I think it really works.
This was such a cool
This was brilliant.
It was, and we will discuss it in big time later. Don't worry, but I think the 15th Doctor, I mean, the third Doctor was very wary. I found it really funny that the third Doctor was saying, you know, stay still, Sarah Jane. If you move, we're dead. And his lips are going like the clappers. If I was Sarah, I'd said, shut your mouth then, mate, because it's your lips that are moving. You know, he's a bossy Doctor in this one. I have to say, I've listed the three Doctors particularly. The first Doctor is quite stern. Second Doctor is fantastic. My first proper introduction to him, apart from the Five Faces, I thought he was impish. I thought he was charming. I thought he was mesmerizing. I thought
he gets alien more than any other Doctor that there's ever been.
It's fab. I really fell in love with that Doctor, thinking that's a brilliant Doctor. And yet the third Doctor, who was my Doctor from being a little kid, he seemed really bossy here, you know, Sarah. And you could see Sarah always acting like a schoolgirl sometimes, going, oh, right, okay. Yeah. And I thought, that's not right. It's not my Sarah, and it's not really my third Doctor. That seemed a bit weird. But the 15th Doctor, I mean, you know, hello.
Just on the Raston warrior robot, isn't there a resemblance to the rabbit of Kerbadog?
Oh, it's got fangs. Look at the bones. Sorry. I have that whole one in my head too.
It's just what it looks like.
It's great.
It looks as if it's filmed there. Then there's these Cybermen coming up, just like really. They are Silver Knights, and anyway, and they just get blasted apart by a vicious rabbit or a man in a funny suit.
Is that just a flesh wound?
Well,
it's just flesh.
And there's me distracted, thinking the third Doctor, you know, luckily the Cybermen came so they could sneak behind, and as usual, when we did the plans of the Daleks, there was suitable, you know, kind of equipment stored. And again, the Raston Rory robot, it can fire things, but suddenly it needs some stores on some wall. And so the third Doctor got away. The 15th Doctor, I think, would have been mesmerized, and maybe I think this is when the plot ends, because I think the 15th Doctor might have thought, actually, I've seen people like you in a nightclub and I'm hanging around. I don't know. I think this would have been the moment that it was plot over, tumbleweed time. Lights go off. It is a dark cave. You don't necessarily just need fire. Oh,
Brendan, I love how you have carte blanche to say anything you want on this subject, and we can just sit back and laugh.
Well,
I'm not saying anything.
And obviously, because we more or less have to do the line every time we do this, is that a hair dryer in your pocket? Are you pleased to see me?
Yeah.
Well, we can tell who still has jobs that we have to be like, ooh, yeah. Well, and these two are retired and they can say whatever they want.
Michelle, I'm applying that rigid logic of Rogue. The Predator Doctor would go, all right, I'm just being obvious. He might have even played Kylie Minogue music as well on top.
I'm just thinking of Narcissist, who is so in love with his reflection that he just stares at it all day.
Yes. And this bit, I mean, it's not the most exciting bit to me, this bit. It seemed a little bit contrived. And, you know, there's a bit of rope around a rock, and then the Cyberman gets there just in time, and it was about to pull it off another. And, of course, poor Sarah again, or should I say poor Liz Sladen, having to do all this acting while Jon Pertwee can sound bossy again. Put your hand there, put your leg there, put your hand. But actually, the 15th Doctor would have just said, here, darling, here's some Mavity gloves. And now you're very light. See, I'm learning.
Again, though, we're getting Terence Dicks's Byron fixation here.
Yeah.
With the tower and above and below.
True. Very good point. Very good point. So yes, I think my answer is Mavity gloves.
I do love the hug he gives her at the end, and she goes, "You want to do that again?" And she starts laughing like, "No." No. You know, then they have that moment of, you know.
Well, you see, just before you saw the Rasson Rory robot, she was having a bit of a strop, quite rightly. It was in a line Liz Sladen loved, because she could actually properly act. Because Jon Pertwee, you know, was going, you're going to have to go along that cliff edge there. That's the only way we can go. Cybermen are behind us. And she was going, right, okay, then let's get on with it. And you could see, you know, she was able to give it a bit. And then, of course, the robot appeared. Because these cameos were killer for them. They had quite dull lines to deliver, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
I have a slight fear of heights, actually, so that one kind of got me.
Yeah, because also I like zip lining. Oh, that would just terrify the blank out of me. So I would be like, get me out of the thing.
Well, this one, the Harp of Rassilon, who knew? But you see, Peter Davison, he could have. I don't know. Was he going to do Button Moon? Or was he going to do a bit of Roy Castle Song and Dance, because we had the Goblin song? So, of course, the 15th Doctor would have probably gone blang, blang, bang, and then away we go. I think it would have been a great excuse to release a single called The Harp of Rassilon, and the 15th Doctor does a full routine, and before you know it, he leans against the door, and then it opens, and there's Barusa, who before he gets nasty and hypnotizes him, actually does a kind of nice little kind of Strictly Come Dancing with him.
Wouldn't he have to do it in a nice pink flowing dress, though?
And why not? I mean, you know, anything can happen in the Ncuti land, and the 15th Doctor can wear anything he wants. So I think this could have been
the
really
importance of being Barusa.
Yes, or actually, you could have had a rap. Barusa is a loser rap. Barusa the loser. The Death Zone is where, I mean, there's loads going on here, but I think that they've missed a trick there. They could have had a song.
Being a historian, I love all the Barusa relics, because we do this with people that are important to our history or our culture or whatever. I love all because I deal with Washington stuff, and we see this all the time. Somebody thinks they have something that belongs to Washington, and they look at it as like, it was made 200 years after they died. Sorry. You know, and we have pieces like, we have a piece of George Washington's coffin at my museum. We have a piece possibly from Martha Washington's dress. You know, these little relics that get saved, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, are they real? Are they fake?
The only snag was, as I said earlier, is you had the Ring of Rassilon, the Tomb of Rassilon, the Harp of Rassilon. I was a bit Rassiloned out.
Right, but it's because it's true. But when you see like stuff like Lincoln or Washington in America, or you know, a king or a prime minister, it's like they save everything. It's like we have this, we have that, we have.
Yeah, I mean
the day of Rassilon.
Yeah, Rassilon Day, Rassilon's birthday, Rassilon's Regeneration Day.
And the final one is the Ring of Rassilon, and of course the 15th Doctor, I think, would have gone for immortality just to get the ring.
Mm-hmm.
The Doctor has a lot more bling than any other Doctor, doesn't he? This Doctor has a lot of bling.
No, I love one because the Fifth Doctor is very snarky, and I love that. I love where he's snarky with about the coronet. Well, it looks very fetching on you.
yeah. There would have been some comment.
So the other bit about this is, obviously he would have noted that every time that Barusa went into that room, he had to have changed his clothes.
Yes, and he's going, I'm jealous, I've only got one costume in this story. Yeah, good point, because he would have said, can I turn into... Yeah. So there you
Do I
go.
get the black outfit as well? And he might have wanted to be sent in the transmat beam where you get your free black cloak.
Yeah, well, Colin Baker would have been jealous, going, "I wanted to be in black all the time." If only you let me. So there you go. So we are applying rigidly to Five Doctors the logic of RTD and how they're going to do it in the future. But when you were watching the Five Doctors, did you have any kind of timey-wimey moments like Yes, our time Eddy moment. Now, I know you can say, well, it's like the Three Doctors, it's like this, it's like that, but I'll throw a few up and see what you thought. I mean, you had the kind of the time scoop invasion of the dinosaurs thing. You had the Carnival of Monsters element. You could say War Games, really, with the Death Zone and different zones. You had the chessboard was basically the same as the Exelon City, wasn't it? And/or Pyramids of Mars copied it as well, have the puzzle on Mars. So there's a few little choices. Any other little thoughts on parts of the story that reminded you of other Doctor Who?
Well, I say we're back at Turn Six's tower fascination. So it's another tower. So you get the Horror of Fang Rock and you get State of Decay.
Very good. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's where RTD did talk about the you can have a vertical storyline as well. Brian, when you watch Five Doctors, do you get little moments where you're going, that is so like that story. This is so like that scene in that story.
Well, right there with the Daleks and coming into the city, the Exelons and Professor Scarman there. Yeah, both of those, the chessboard, that was the one I first thought of, was solve the puzzle, get across. Actually, they don't show it there, but that little board that they came across where Pertwee had to throw the coins, and he says, "Was that really necessary?" That was almost, let's just borrow this and jazz it up a bit with some disco lights or something and lasers, but I still enjoyed watching all those Cybermen go down.
Yeah, Cyber Massacre. It was unbelievable. An absolute Cyber Massacre. The whole thing
Anthony
about
Ainley was great in this.
Yeah. I mean,
he was great.
I mean, it obviously it looked like the Exelon City dance floor, except you didn't pitch and toss, and it wasn't one of the worst cliffhangers in history in the Death of the Daleks, where the Daleks just looked down at a floor. That kind of nonsense. Anyway, so I suppose we should continue. Oh yeah, and the other thing was the whole idea of Robert Holmes that had to kind of genetically steal something from the genetics of a Time Lord was done in Timeless Children. So the Timeless Children maybe in some ways was always going to happen, and the Cyber Lords was going to happen if Robert Holmes had done the Six Doctors. So you think, does Chris Chibnall, classic fan fiction, just think I'll revive that idea? And unfortunately, it was always going to happen.
Yeah, I'm very glad it didn't happen. Sorry, on go.
Brian?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, if you had to choose between the two, I think Robert would have probably done it right.
Right.
And it is just the one-off special. So I think after that special is over, whatever they had done would have been part of the resolution. The Doctor not only has to get to the tomb, but they also have to stop the Cybermen from becoming cyber lords. Everything would be fixed, and then move on next season back to normal.
Right.
Instead of what they've done now, where they've made it official and it's canon and it's going to run forever and it's going to bother us to no end every time it's mentioned. But oh well.
Before I forget, on the overall Five Doctors, I loved some of the humor and the little touches, and I do think out of all the mashups, Troughton with Courtney, And there was some lovely lines. I really did like some of the lines when, for example, Brigadier, when have I ever let you down? And many times. Well, this will be the first time I don't, and just lovely. Absolutely loved it.
Another fine mess you've gotten us into, Doctor.
Any other thoughts on humor for a second? Any lovely little moments that lovely touches you saw in this that made it really special?
I think the line where Anthony Ainley says a universe without the Doctor unthinkable is just possibly the best line in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the end, how the Fifth Doctor got out from being the Lord President, and he's like, "We're gonna go back.
Yeah.
Get in the TARDIS now. Get in the TARDIS now." And then she's like, and then Troy goes, "Well, won't they be angry?" He goes, "Furious."
My irritation element was when Tegan was matched with the First Doctor and they were arguing over the word Doc. Kindly don't call me Doc. And in a way, it kind of started with Ace and Professor and all that stuff. It's not hard to say Doctor, is it? I don't understand why.
Well, I think she's just doing that because that's not her doctor. You're not my doctor. You're some other old dude, so I call you Doc. You're not my doctor.
Mind you, there was that moment that said that in the script that the First Doctor in the TARDIS said, "Can you make me a cup of tea?" And Janet Fielding refused, so it had to be then delivered to Turlough as a line.
And I love that where he walks into and has to go help Turlough. You tell him to go help, and he gets that look and he walks off. As a manager, that is like what I see almost daily when I have to tell somebody to do something. It's like
Yes, he does do that.
Sorry, Michelle. I just had a thought. There was one scene that was supposed to be so humorous, and I think it fell completely flat. Was when Sarah shook the Fifth Doctor's hand, and she seemed a little bit uncertain and just said, "It was nice meeting you." And then Pertwee turns to her and says, "Yes, it was nice meeting you too, Sarah Jane." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "I'll explain later." I was like, Sarah's smarter than that. She knows what's going on.
Yes, and
fell flat.
That's when I thought the Third Doctor was ill-served with some of the lines. Like I said, he came across as a bit more bossy than he really was. And patronizing Sarah was another one, I have to say. You're right on that, Brian. You
notice when we have reunions, you're never going to get everybody 100% correct because we're not having the original writers, especially with the thing when we had the 12th and the First Doctor meet and how egregious they wrote the First Doctor as the sexist, man of the 60s.
But at least here, they had the First Doctor solved it. Because as you know, they get all the Doctors back. Peter Davison's Doctor appears obviously mesmerized and under some influence. And the First Doctor knew the trap for immortality. That's why he laughed at the end, didn't he? So I quite like the fact that whether you get 10 doctors in a room, 20 doctors in a room, the First Doctor is the one. And yet, logically, I'm having the right logic there, he's the youngest.
Yes, he is.
He should be the most immature, really, shouldn't he?
Yeah. But I was going to say that the scene that always gets me laughing, and I use this as a gif, is when they have him and he says about, does anybody else want immortality? And they're like, no.
Nope. That was great.
That's like being a manager. Okay, can somebody do so? Oh, no. Can somebody go mop the bathroom? No.
But they were all offering to, they were all siding one way, but the First Doctor broke ranks, didn't he? Because he knew what was going on.
At the end, when he says, when after they've already seen him become the part of the statue, and he's like, "Does anybody else?" And they all hide behind each other.
Thinking about the 5 Doctors and thinking of some of my criticisms later on, was there any jeopardy in this story? Was there any tension in this story? Was there any scare factor in this story? Or was it just a lovely jolly, Because I think I'll answer my own question dead fast. I think to me the scariest bit, or the bit with the most jeopardy, was probably the Yeti chasing the Brigadier and the Second Doctor. I think that bit did look as though they were trapped and they were stuck. And maybe the ghostly cameos at the end screaming. I'm just thinking of where there would be any scares. But apart from that, the jeopardy, the Dalek one seemed quite easy peasy. So I mean, what did you think, Hugh, regarding jeopardy?
How can you ignore the terrifying embankment of death? Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, things have to happen fairly quickly. So there's lots of bits of Jeopardy that don't really build. I suppose the Wrestling Warrior robot, there is, Liz Sladen, as ever, acts everything into what's not a very scary scene. I think it's more about the corruption within the Time Lords, rather than anything else. So it's Turnstick's doing that. I don't think it's necessarily, and this is where the plot doesn't really give you anything, because there's no reason for them to be in danger, because they have to get through from his point of view in order to solve the problem that he wants solved, so he knows they're not in danger as well. So
yeah, because he ended up having cameo villains. I mean, poor Paul Jericho's character wasn't a baddie, really. You then have the Master doing a cameo Master, but he did have a fair few good lines, and he tricked the Cybermen and that. But yeah, like I said earlier, it was the Time Lords again, and of course it's humanoids rather than the kids want the monsters. The kids want the monsters. Your thoughts, Michelle, on Jeopardy, tension, thrilling you?
The most was the Raston Warrior. I mean, can we also talk about the great scene where the Raston Warrior decapitates a Cyberman?
If that's what triggers you, that's
well, yeah. I mean, that just makes me feel warm and fuzzy all over. But yeah, that was a great scene, and the throwing up Cyberman.
Oh yeah.
I know. I mean, and I'll get the picture later, but yeah, there's the.
I mean, and that was on the children, and you guys survived children's telly. I mean, here we are, children in need, and this guy comes over to decapitates Cyberman.
But you
was
see,
Mary Whitehouse still around for this?
She was probably in a care home. No, she was probably still around. Yes, but
she was at a care home yelling at squirrels.
But I still have questions. This is my favorite scene. Of course it is. I think most Doctor Who fans go, the battle between the Ras and Rory robot and the Cybermen was just class. The music, the direction. I know it was John Nathan Turner. It was great. I
and
even
that was
think
a difficult scene to film because that ground was very marshy, and they had to train the guys how to fall. They said that they had fell wrong and started sinking, they were going to panic, and they would have had possibly a medical emergency. So they were teaching the guys how to fall correctly on that ground.
But I kind of also like the silver on grey on another version of grey. There's something gritty and that works. I mean, that may have been done by accident, but it works actually, I think, visually. The thing that I have to question as a kind of burning issue, though, and I will ask the question, is, we're all Doctor Who fans and we all know the rules. Great scene, great bit of fun. However, if you hadn't blooming changed the Cybermen, Eric Saywood, and let's go a bit further back, they didn't normally have guns. They normally had their gun on their headset. In other words, a lot of them, when they were fighting the Ras and Rory robot, he was taking out their arm. Yeah, that's not how you finish a Cyberman off, is it? Because their gun used to be there, and they've evolved badly to make them easier to kill. That's what's happened.
Well, maybe they're the Death Zone version of, they're not fully Cybermen.
Yeah, I just think the guns accessory is a
they're a neuter Cybermen.
I think in that classic era, they actually switched back and forth quite a bit from gun to that little thing on the head, like in Revenge of the Cybermen with Tom Baker. They had it coming out there. But in the Invasion, they actually held guns. And looking back,
true.
Even the Cyberman that put the gun across his wrist, it kept changing all the time. Yeah, they never really they finally settled on the gun.
It did. It's just that, for example, jump into Star Trek. I thought the Borg was a great invention, which was very like the Cybermen, but that made them blooming hard to defeat. Whereas the Cybermen, once they've got accessories and stuff, it's like Earthshock was classic. When Tegan grabs a gun and just fires it back at them and all that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, surely by now the Cybermen are much more invincible than this. Really, really. But yes, it's a great scene. And actually, you never really saw that picture. I remember showing it before. it's so dramatic. It's a shame you never really saw that a lot more, because it shocks everybody to see a Cyberman like that. As you said, Michelle, the vomiting, and a lot of them have a kind of harpoon through their arm as well. There's all that going on, and the decapitation. And you're quite right; it's children in need.
The first time I saw that, I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Well, now we do a retcon Davros on children in need because we can't, upset people. But gosh, shows you how the world has gone backwards. We're much more infantilized now, much more infantilized and protected now. So there you go. That was a key moment. And of course, you did mention the Dalek mutant being seen so vividly for the first time. And that was a good effect. It's just that you were building to that effect, weren't you, really? So moments of jeopardy, I'm not too sure about. I know that's not the main event. It was supposed to enjoy ourselves. But if you're going to enjoy yourselves, you just want Daleks, monsters, chase sequences, stuff like that, don't you? And as you said, Hugh, why are we stuck on Gallifrey?
I sort of get it.
Oh,
sorry, I sort of get it that we're on Gallifrey because big reason why you would have the doctors involved, because it has to involve time and stuff like that. So it's difficult to put other people in charge of that. So I get it. It's an easy jump to it.
Since this is the greatest hits of Doctor Who, do you get the point by Terence Dicks that after the rewrites that the Cybermen are in it too much compared to everything else?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's too many of them. Again, what are they doing there? Why are there, 30 or 40 of them? It doesn't make an awful lot of sense.
And
but
they end
again,
up being...
this thing, it doesn't make a lot of sense. We sort of have to accept that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of pie. It was a matter of a load of codswallop, wasn't it? Because when Richard Hurndall ran across, and of course, I was trying to work out this pie. I was thinking, we've all done it at school, 3.142 and all that stuff. And I was thinking, so are you the third one along? That's a red. And then is the next one 3.1? So that's the first one. I was trying to work out what the hell pi had to do with all this. I mean, does anyone still know?
Nothing.
Nothing. I'm bad at math. I would be screwed. It's like pie. Ooh, is it chocolate? Does it? Ooh, is it lemon meringue?
Yeah.
It's just you have a chessboard, and then he says it's as easy as pie, and then like I said, the first Doctor just walks across. Actually, and Anthony Ainley's master was standing on one of the squares while he's talking to the Cybermen, and I'm thinking, this isn't a very triggered. I don't know. I know they said they ran out of filming time. It's the usual story with Doctor Who, but it was such a plot device, this pie, and it screwed up all the Cybermen. And yet Tegan could walk across. The first Doctor could walk across, and the Master could play hopscotch. It was weird. Yes, that.
So I think whenever the Master's doing the hopscotch, you're meant to think something about sort of Fibonacci sequences as well, and a circle rolling out. But it's just, it's not even the basic sort of stuff that you would get on the adventure game.
No, on the adventure game. And the funny thing was, all these actors, even that cyber leader there, he's not stood on the squares, so he's just getting shot in the middle and all the rest of it. They weren't keeping an eye on whether the things were. But the other bit of dialogue was, they said the death trap changes the sequence every time. So if you did know pi, how come? I mean, the Doctor said, follow my footsteps, and I'm thinking, yeah, but it's going to change the thing again, isn't it? Yeah, I know it was a lot of fun. It was a bit too much like Exelon to me. It really was. I wish they could have done something else, but I know Terence Dicks was so up against it, and I'm not knocking that at all. Good, as you mentioned earlier, it was good to see Anthony Ainley. He had a good little part, to be honest. I thought he had a lot to say.
He was fantastic, I thought, in this. The enemy that was called in to save the Doctor, and after getting slighted over and over and over again, he was just like, I don't care. I'm going to kill you 4 times over, he said he'd had it, and I can't blame him.
If you really look at the Five Doctors plot, I almost, as a viewer, felt sorry for the Master because the Third Doctor dissed him, the Fifth Doctor dissed him, and he does actually remark on that later. And I have to say, when you talk about storytelling and where you want the audience's sympathies to be, I did actually feel sorry because the Master we knew was telling the truth for once.
Yeah. And then I love the Brig coming over and knocking him out. And then of course there's the great blooper of knocking him in the cobblers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a blooper where they film it and then they go cut and you hear Pertwee go, next time knock him in the cobblers.
Hold on, I'm getting invaded by a certain. What was the dog character in Flux? Because we've got a version in this house, but I'm trying to. Oh, it was like D'Artagnan. It was. It was awful. So
I just thought of it as Bungle.
Yes, I know. It was a bit worrying that. So while we're spinning around loads of plates regarding what bothered us, what cheer does, what was great about it, what got us going, I need to make sure I do uphold BBC standards. You mentioned Mary Whitehouse earlier, and it is important that we uphold that. So it is time for our intimacy watch. Sound effect then from you.
I have been waiting for this.
Well, it's coming. Oh, yeah, let's get rocking it. So basically, and you know why? Season 2 with the great progressive RTD has an intimacy coordinator on the staff. So basically, I'm just upholding it. I'm protecting classic Who. We might have to censor scenes and stuff. I spotted 2, because obviously 5 Doctors should be a nice little laugh. But I have to say, if you look closely, I'm not too sure. I think we need an intimacy watch here because yes, I think the Third Doctor's getting a bit too I mean, Sarah can look after herself. She doesn't need I don't know. She doesn't need any help.
I thought we were going to go for the scene where Sarah's clearly pulling out a wedgie.
No.
Yes, look for it. When she's wiggling at one point, and you can tell her she's probably got a wedgie. She's been bothering her for a while, and she finally was just able to pull, and you kind of see her pulling it out. We've all been there.
Would I do that? I just found it interesting because when Jon Pertwee whisks her away, his hand accidentally goes high and pulls her away. But yes, but as an intimacy coordinator, I'd maybe have to have a word with Jon and just say, can we do that again, just so she's not, I mean, I'm just aware of these things.
That's what gets me. They didn't even have the time or money to just reshoot that one bit of dialogue and walking off camera. I couldn't believe they left this in.
Well, there you go. And arms around somebody. I mean, now you have to be so careful with everything, proximity, the lot. And my other little one.
Unless it was a flub line, they were not refilming it most of the time.
Well, the other one here was the Master was tied up, and then of course two women, female actors, were doing the acting of tying him up, and I'm thinking this has got problem written all over it. I think
not to me.
Well, maybe so, but for children in need. But I just thought, well, here we go. Let's just tie somebody up. And
there was a lot of awakenings during watching Doctor Who when people started feeling certain feelings.
Yeah, my awakenings were not in this scene.
It's probably just a grimace, but Janet almost looks like she's enjoying this.
Do you think? Because they're
It
probably
looks
going.
like it.
Yeah, I think so.
It looks like it.
They got him tied up and they pull off his wig. Now,
Oh, heck.
Oh,
What's the worst knot you could do, which you couldn't get out of? She might have been doing that, a really strict knot.
I'm not a knot person.
No, I'm not
No,
a
not
knotty
either.
person either. No.
so
So there
boat
you
knot
go.
or something where you can't get the boat supposed to be citizens or drift off.
So there you go. I'm just upholding the integrity of our review. So early doors. This is where you can shoot the breeze a bit, really. Which is, I will ask the question. I know you'll laugh at me. Was this true who or boo who? And of course, did it follow canon or did it? I did say it changed canon slightly, that the Time Lords could offer regeneration. It wasn't just the greatest hits. Terrence Dicks did add something new. But because it was Terrence Dicks, as I think I said in the intro, he knows Doctor Who. And so he was giving us Doctor Who. And I can't doubt that what he did was classic. It was the time scoop. You had a range of monsters. You had companions roughly as they were before. He remembered, I mean, the bit when Troughton says, "You two don't know me because your memory's been erased in the war games." Yeah, Terrence Dicks on the money. So
actually,
that creates a slight problem. So, because if he knows that they don't know him, and if he immediately regenerated after that, then he won't be there.
Right.
Was it season 6B or
6B, yeah, or something. Yeah.
Again,
Right.
and also the two doctors doesn't make sense, but it's a timey-wimey show.
Yeah.
They're always going to break canon somewhere.
Yeah. The Time Lords even said that they would leave the memories of their first adventure, and then after that, gone. So they would recognize him, but not each other. It's a very odd situation. And when you do time travel shows, these things happen.
Zoe might have been saying, "Why am I wearing bubble wrap? Am I Noah in Ark in Space?" Because she's suddenly wearing all this blue bubble wrap.
Actually, it was to cover up her pregnancy, and sadly, she lost the baby shortly after filming this.
Yes, it was. But bubble wrap was that's classic Doctor Who. That's classic Doctor Who. Fraser and all that bulk. I mean, from the Highlanders onwards, all that gear from God, it's like it must have been so hot in studios to wear all that stuff. And problematic, of course, in certain scenes. But yes, it's an easy question, this, so I'll start with you, Hugh. True who, boo who, but where would you want to go with your examples?
Well, I think it's obviously true in terms of everything that we've just talked about. I have one slight worry about it in terms of, a couple of slight worries about it, but we're back at the Time Lords thing. It doesn't feel consistent with Barusa's character.
No.
He feels as if he's just gone completely off the rails, as is said by Peter Davison as the Doctor. And then it's just this, it's the tension between what the Time Lords are, and it's part of Terrence Dicks's writing that the Time Lords are effectively what was some form of mad evil race, which suddenly decided will become boring.
Yeah.
Well, even they say the one I think it was the Castleman says your mood has not improved with this latest regeneration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then, oh no, not the mind probe.
That was horribly delivered.
Yes, I love it for the cheesy fun of it. It's just great.
Mind you,
it's
the
actual
Christopher Walken style.
Yeah, it's what happens. I mean, they kill him with the mind probe. That seems really out of character.
That Gallifreyan guard, though, he seemed quite smug. I didn't think that was delivered well. So when they said, "Why did you shoot him? Was that necessary?" And he said, "Because he ran away." No. Didn't seem to that seemed out of kilter to me. As did the little water fountain that they had to walk around. This little trickly, pathetic water fountain for £5. But
it's the sort of portrayal of the Time Lords overall. I find it's a bit Problematic here.
They're like middle management of some corporations. Like we're just very officious, but incompetent at the same time.
But the immortality plot device, I mean, how far away? Right, okay, Barussa's gone a bit crazy and ambitious, and he wants to be president forever, whatever. He wants immortality. But we've just had the plot early on when they offered a whole regeneration cycle to the Master. In other words, he could have just kept giving himself regeneration cycles. I mean, so, yeah.
He's a Time Lord with term limits. That's what cracked me up. I'm a Time Lord, but with term limits.
But didn't he get special powers with all of this Barussa technology? You know, the amulet of Barussa, the headdress of Barussa, the Barussa gloves, everything. He could make the Doctor bow down to him, where as if he just had a new regeneration cycle.
Yeah, I've got the gardening glove of Razalon. But the thing is, in the Deadly Assassin, the sash of Razalon. That was the thing that gave the Master the power, wasn't it? The sash of Razalon. It was that did
yes,
it,
that's what saved him. Yeah.
But where's the sash gone now? Has that fallen down that hole in Deadly Assassin? I mean, is that it?
Yeah.
No more sash of Razalon. But now we've just got the gardening.
I'm resisting the temptation to bust into the sash my father wore, which one side of the sectarian divide in Scotland would say.
And of course, a sash is important to all us Sensorites in the Sensorite story, because of course, one Sensorite sash went you at a certain level. You know, that's important. I'm going back to sashes. Very important. So, Michelle, true who or boo who? And of course, you've got a nice easy hit here on anything you want to talk about.
It to me is true who, even though it has some issues. But again, it's done by a writer who knows Doctor Who cares about Doctor Who, who's trying to put across a good little show for the 20th anniversary, which for this little show they never thought was going to last past 12 episodes, and to be on the air for 20 years at this point consecutively, that was an amazing feat. And it's just a good little lark.
And to be honest, I mean, there's Bessie. I mean, Bessie's in it. Unit's in it. Mm-hmm. The Third Doctor's still Action Man. He's rock climbing. He's, you know, I mean, there's so many beats are still there. I mean, and yes, I'm not going to ever criticize the Five Doctors script really, because it's amazing how much he's managed.
These are actors who are having a good time, seeing their chums back in a character that they loved, just having a good little lark.
Yeah. And most of it is true who. I mean, like I said, you know, the Third Doctor seems a little bit more bossy than usual, that sort of thing. But that's it. I like I said, I still think my steal away is great rapport between Nick Courtney and Patrick Troughton, and some great
a comedy show together. They could have had like a comedy routine.
Well, it was just the little cyber attack with the hand, and then when Nick Courtney says, "Are you in pain?" No, I'm singing. You know, and all just a little.
Or at the end, where he goes and just kicks the coach. And I love the section where they're like typical. They bring us all around the universe, and then they leave us when it gets good.
So to me, that was lovely to see. Brian, true who, boo who? Where did you enjoy this experience?
True who, despite its flaws. True who. I mean, especially I didn't know at first that Tom was on the fence and then decided to bow out, so they had to rewrite the whole script. It was just a lot of fun, you know. And I think when they do it today, maybe it takes itself a little too seriously. You know, there's nothing. I mean, I'm not complaining. I loved the 50th anniversary to death. It was great. I cried when Tom came on. Come on, who didn't? Who didn't cry when Tom came on screen? Exactly.
Yes,
but this was a lot of fun. It was the first time I'd ever seen a multi-doctor story. I wasn't around for the Three Doctors, so to see. But I grew up with Unit just a little bit, you know. So to see Unit again and Jon Pertwee, and to see Patrick Troughton for the first time, I loved it. I think it's true who, not to be taken too seriously. Lots of fun. When you asked about scariest moments or thrills earlier, I thought the most horrifying thing was when they put Barussa into the stone tablet and gave him life.
Yes,
that was creepy.
Yeah,
That
and then
was
the eyes moving.
creepy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was extremely creepy.
that was almost
Just
Grimm's
responded.
fairy tales. That you the curse that you had to carry whatever it was through. It had a horrible.
It was a
kind of
terrifying
justice to
concept.
Yeah, you're there and you're aware, but you're stuck for all eternity in this torture.
Well,
Yeah.
The interesting thing is what that says about the Time Lords, because it means that Rassilon, as it says, knew that they were all likely at some stage to be tempted by this idea. And, okay, three previous ones had made it through, but how many had failed in the attempt?
It was a funny one because the close up of each. I mean, it was cleverly this bit of beat by Peter Moffat I did like, because you have 4 there, don't you? But there was one spare, one blank one, wasn't it? And the camera just panned along, didn't it? And then you could see their eyes. That was a horrible bit. I must admit, you're right, Brian. The bit with the eyes, they were very red, weren't they? And they were looking around, and they were kind of alive but trapped. That was that's horror movie, isn't it? The Living Dead type thing.
And there's a reference to the extent in Buffy, I think, that's taken from this, which is where the cheerleader or the cheerleader mother gets stuck in the cheerleader trophy, and I'm sure it's a tribute to this.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of those, a clip of, is it Saw 2 or 3 or Mannequin, or I don't know what. I'm trying to think of a horror movie, and I never saw it through, but I saw a clip, and somebody was turned into a mannequin and they were trapped alive inside. And I thought, whoa, that is, oh my God, to be trapped, but you can't move. That sort of thing. So I do remember, and you're so right, Brian, because that element, it did make me think as a younger teenager, wow, you're alive but dead. You kind of get immortality, but you're kind of concrete. Whoa, that was the only time we did that again. Was the only other time we did that was Love and Monsters with the pavement. The girlfriend who became a pavement,
and that did not work.
I don't think any of them can commit a sexual act, though.
No.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, no. Especially since that was a child that invented that monster. Let's put a sex joke in there, kids.
Yes.
No, I remember watching that, and it's one of the few times of, like, in terms of New Who, where I was actually watching it with someone's kids, and it's just going, oh God.
Well, that's the kind of joke that's supposed to go over the kids' heads, and the adults get a little bit of a laugh. They did it on the Pee Wee Herman special years ago, where that little genie, if you've ever seen it, that lives inside the box and says "Mecca lecca hi, Mecca hiney ho." He gets a pair of hands. That was his wish. At the end of the episode, he gets a pair of hands, and he goes, "Oh, this is great. Now I get to do something I've always wanted to do." And then he goes off camera. And I was shocked, but that was Pee Wee Herman for you. They always they had adult humor mixed in with the kid humor.
Yeah.
Well, let's just throw this one in there.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's just put it that way.
So, criteria 2, the use of the production, the budget. You don't pick on all of these, obviously you don't. You pick your favorites or your worst elements. So the direction, the music, set, costume design, actors, choice, visual effects, with Doctor Who, sometimes that was one of them. So anything come to mind?
So the set design is fantastic. I mean, just the Tomb of Rassilon. I just love it. It's I always think, I know people say like the director wasn't always the greatest or the most skillful. He had a pretty big job on this one of trying to corral all of these actors who all have their personalities and their quirks. This had been like herding cats. And so I think he did an able job of herding all of these cats and getting them to end up on screen and to do their beats. And this is one of the few from the classic era. We have so many great bloopers because, again, we're dealing with all of these personalities.
I like the model on the right. I like the Dark Tower in the Death Zone, but I'll just comment on it. But yes, I thought the set was a little bit lame, a bit flat. But yes, there's a lot of sets to actually budget for, and therefore everything is stretched. No wonder there was a lot of outside broadcast. But you can see that flaw. I mean, there were elements. It's chock-a-block steps. I I don't know. There was a good effect when they made the tomb look higher and they did
Mhm.
that extra paint in there. But really, this story was just a kind of, it was every B&M collector's dream, wasn't it?
And those figurines are in a private collection now. They still exist. They were on J&T's mantle until he died.
I bet. And the good old
The thing about it is that there's a sort of innocence at that stage that it wasn't ready to roll out the merchandise in order
Mhm.
to pay for some of this, because it's just at that time whenever the thought is there, because to an extent that's why there is quite so much in terms of the nostalgia, but they didn't quite go, oh, you know what, actually we could make some money out of this.
Well, again, it goes back to the BBC never really knew what to do with the show.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, it's 20. Oh, the show that we only thought would last 12 episodes. Oh, well, those weird people still like Doctor Who. Oh, I guess we have to do a long lead, and then we'll oversell tickets. And that should have been like, we got money on our hands. Long lead should have been the wake up call that to give J&T the more money that he was asking for.
We see,
that should have been the moment where they realized they had a cash cow in their hands.
But obviously, the BBC. I've never made any strategic decisions that made any sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're a little bit like Belfry. They never really quite make sense with their decisions.
But the issue was that when I was at Longleat, and we all know there was a surprise by the BBC. It's how big it was, etc., etc. But by then, the Five Doctors was in the can. Like I said, I was looking at the sets. Warriors of the Deep had been commissioned because he announced it at the convention. We were moving on, and Peter Davison had almost announced he was leaving. Bang, that
But there should have been for like the Sixth Doctor era. They realized that they had money on the table.
This is the tricky thing with Doctor Who, though. If your main actor then suddenly leaves, it's a funny time to invest in a show. I will give the BBC that one slightly because, of course, do you put all your maybe there's an element
the fact
of
that you and your dad got in free to Longleat just shows you how bad organized it was. That the fact that you guys parked in the car park and they built the thing around you, that they didn't realize that there should be limits, a fence,
It means we look like two tradies. That's what it meant. We looked rough as hell, and they must have thought, "Oh, you're with behind the scenes staff." Let's put the kiosk behind them. Bless them. I wondered why everyone avoided me all day. I must. So anyway, no washing. Just nothing. So on the production thing, what do you reckon, Brian?
I actually liked the everything was fun, but the music is what stuck with me.
Yes.
Was it still Peter Howell?
Yes.
Or was he?
Yeah.
Okay, because he seemed, if I recall, I know they did. I miss Dudley Simpson immensely. I mean, Peter Howell's music, when Tom's Starfield intro came in and everything, I was like, this is cool. But after several weeks, I wished it all had come back. I wish we still had the slit scan time tunnel. I'd wish that we still had a small, I don't even know if you want to use the word orchestra, but whatever you want to call it. And it seemed there was a combination of the two. There was there was electronic, but there was also music done by real instruments, at least I believe. If not, it was very convincing. And they were just the little, when you see the tower, it just gets right into your head. I thought the music throughout the entire show was great.
Well, the daft thing is
the blending of the themes at the end too. They start off with the original, then they go into the Howell version.
But they've used
that's the only part I didn't like. It was it was because the early days of Pitch Shifters, it was very chipmunky in a way. It had a bit of a
it wasn't
work right.
It wasn't, but we all of us of a certain era have that Five Doctors album and all the rest of it with all this music on. So yes, as you've just been saying, all these Peter Howell touches are almost in our subconscious, to the point where, as you know, in the BBC proms, there's a moment when Peter Howell plays that kind of bazooka or whatever it is to make that dark zone. It's so kind of iconic that they only have to do a blast of it, and we go, and then we get the Tomb of the Cybermen, and then we get and then I think they play with the BBC proms the cyber attack and Rasson Rory robot moment, the music then, because
so good.
it ramped up, didn't it? It was Doctor. I mean, this is what I mean on sense of scale. You know, I always go on about you don't need 1 million Daleks, you don't need this and then blah blah blah. You had what, about 8 Cybermen, and you had 1 robot, and we were allowed for about 2 minutes to enjoy chaos. And Peter Howell, you know, the composition worked, give us drama, and yeah. That the music really worked then. I loved, as I said, the Peter Howell touches when the first Doctor walks in the TARDIS, and I think it's bass, but it has a kind of old Doctor Who sound to it. It's almost doing the, I don't know, there were some nice touches. I normally hate
whenever Peter Davison starts playing the Harp of Rassilon, then that echoes the theme tune.
I can't remember, does it?
It's just at the very start. So you can place when he plays the 3 notes. It's just the start of the theme tune.
Oh, okay.
And it's just very basic, but it's a nice nod in terms of that.
Not like the Devil's Chord where it plays into the
The other thing I think, sort of, whenever you put up the cast, I mean, one of the things there is, I think Paul Jekyll, apart from "Oh no, not the mind probe," it's good because he carries on the Castellan. But Dinah Sheridan and Philip Latham are proper actors. I mean, Dinah Sheridan's an institution, or was an institution, for having appeared in Genevieve and The Railway Children. And Philip Latham had done the 26 episodes of The Pallisers.
Hugh, I've got a question. I've got a question about Dinah Sheridan, though, which is, you know, when the Master's called to the council to talk to them, he kind of addresses them all, and then he goes, "Chancellor Flavia," and there's something about. I mean, did he want a room? I mean, he sounds like Flavia. He seemed a bit too excited that there was a female Time Lord in the room. To me,
I think he's just excited being in the same room as Dinah Sheridan. It's in 2 of the British film's greatest institutions.
He was being uncharacteristically polite and almost showing her respect when he greeted her. It was a little weird.
However,
one of my favorite lines was when he said, "What makes you think I want your forgiveness?"
Yes.
Great line. Great line.
It was interesting because, in a way, that caught me out, the Chancellor Flavia bit, except the Roger Delgado Master was charming. You know, he wasn't going around like some pantomime villain. He was charming, and in some ways quite gentlemanly in a kind of funny sort of way. It was so yeah. It's which version of the Master do you want to present? You had all the lines. Nick Courtney reprised his 3 Doctors bit about a nice. What's the line about the Doctors? All of you, great people. What's that?
All of you.
Raising chaps, all of you.
Yeah.
Great chaps, all of you.
He reprised that, and then of course Patrick Troughton got to say, "You've redecorated units. Don't like it."
I don't like it. Yeah.
I don't like it.
Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow.
Yes, we got that one in. He could remember that line in his sleep, I'm sure. So you got a few lovely touches. I just think, if I'm going to kind of conclude some of them, Susan is misserved. Susan is not just another companion, and I just think if they're going to bring Susan back, learn from the 5 Doctors, because if I was Caroline Ford, to be quite honest, I would be saying to RTD, I'm not going to have a crap script like that for Susan. Susan's a bit more than that. And isn't that why Caroline Ford left? She didn't want to be a screamer. She didn't just want to look as though, you know, she was an unearthly child. And saying, trip over there, stare at Peter Davison as if you've got nothing to say, stay in the TARDIS with Turlough. That means you've got the graveyard shift. And just say, oh, the Cybermen, I think they're making a bomb. Ooh, and be very passive. Yeah. You know, if I was Caroline Ford, and I heard her at Dwas this year with me and John Daly when she was talking in a panel, and quite rightly, we all know it. No, she needs better service than that. If you're gonna do all of the season 1 arc is we're bringing Susan back, well, make sure she does something. Don't regenerate her. Don't you blooming dare, RTD. So, yeah, Susan, I thought, was misserved. What do you reckon to Richard Hurndall as the first Doctor? Because this set us up for David Bradley and everything else.
He's not as good as David Bradley. He's not, but for what it was, perfectly passable.
And also, Ian Ncuti replaced William Hartnell. He did a passable job, and this was his last role because he passed away shortly after this aired. So this is kind of a nice, strong song to a very serviceable actor.
I thought he did the anger of the first, or the cantankerousness, really well.
Yeah.
Whereas the David Bradley one, I don't find... It depends which type of William Hartnell you're trying to do. And he said he didn't look at any video footage of William Hartnell because nobody wants to do a mimicry or an impersonation. And what's his name? Michael Sheen says that. He tries to just bring his version when he's doing different key characters. But I thought Richard Hurndall's anger was good as the first Doctor.
And the bit at the end, as you were talking about, Brendan, where he gets it, he gets the answer, is quite Troughton. It's quite Hartnell-esque.
And I would have thought for anybody, whether you're David Bradley or Richard Hurndall, it's hard to do William Hartnell because William Hartnell's first Doctor was sometimes cantankerous, sometimes really cheeky and looking and playing to the camera with his, his hands here. And which version are you playing of him? And I don't know where the sexist Doctor came from, but there you go. I mean,
it's just
I haven't seen too much Hartnell, but I know that Richard here, he really knew how to eat a sandwich. I don't know why.
Yes.
That's just stuck in my brain. He really knew how to enjoy a sandwich. Strange.
And there's also another part of the blooper reel is him really going to town on the pineapple.
Yes, yeah. He does.
There's part of the blooper reel.
It shows you Ian Levine, Mr. Superfan, is the one who had a word with John Nathan Turner and said, have you seen Richard Hurndall in Blake 7? Because, of course, he looks exactly like that. He has almost the same wig. And I can't remember.
In Blake 7.
He's in Blake 7, and he looks like...
I just started watching last night. But this is Doctor Who, so we'll leave that for.
If you type in Richard Hurndall, it'll tell you which episode he's in.
Is it? I think it's Pillar.
And that's how he got the job to be the first Doctor, was his performance on Blake 7.
It was because it's very similar. It's when I saw it in Blake 7, I thought, God, he's like the first Doctor, and so I think everybody thought it.
And see, I think the episode's Killer.
Okay, Killer.
Yeah.
So there you go. And then we had the introduction of all the Gallifreyan writing, which now goes all over the 15th Doctor's hands and sonic screwdriver and everywhere. It's all become part of a kind of Banksy scroll now. 5 Doctors. Although it's easy watching and it's comfort watching and it's got all the greatest hits, my concern is they just about got away with it with 4 Doctors, and Terence Dicks acknowledges it was quite handy that one dropped out in the end. We've now got 15 Doctors, and to me, what has worked should no longer ever be experimented with. My personal rule now is no more multi-Doctor stories of that, because it's mad. Do a comedy one. The 5-ish Doctors was great.
Oh God, that was fantastic.
I'm
not even a fan for bringing back the old companions from the original series. I just, if they're gonna make a new show, go new. For our generation, it's nice to kind of like go back a bit and see the ones that we grew up with. But they've changed so drastically. The show has changed so drastically. I just think,
their characters aren't even recognizable. Their characters aren't even recognizable.
No, not really, and they're totally different.
Tegan into a bitter woman. I mean, that's not Tegan.
This is the problem. Bringing Tegan back, bringing Mel back, bringing Ace back.
as bitter too.
But they've
Like,
all got very weird stories, which get
Mm.
us messed up with Net Zero or this or that. And you think, oh, come on, Tegan, what? Ace, what? Mel as a mad auntie, really? Honestly, yes, I can see your point, Brian, although I did like School Reunion and how...
Oh, that's totally different. Because, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Because, of course, they're focused on one companion, although there was the moment in there where, for some reason, the dialogue got a bit nasty with Rose and they got competitive over a man.
That was ridiculous.
Oh,
yes.
That was humor, though. I mean,
Yeah.
that was funny. Kind of like the ex-girlfriend bit. Yeah, you're right. He dealt with the subject matter that they brought up, that they also did with Rose and her mother. It was like, you get a companion, you travel, and then the companion says goodbye. But in her case, she said, I thought you were going to come back. I waited for you. And they'd never done anything like that before, except, of course, at the beginning of the series with Rose disappearing for like 6 months or something like that. And that's we all love Sarah. Sarah was the biggest, best companion from the original series, so it was nice to see her get together with David Tennant and
if
one more time. But
now,
yeah, we're overdoing it. They're overdoing it nowadays.
I gave you a list of those who were maybe going to be in it, from Harry to Sergeant Benton to various Ian. Now, if you had a clean slate and everybody was alive, and and Terrence Dicks was just waiting himself to just kind of write the script, who would you have liked to have been with each Doctor? So, all 5 Doctors are in it. Who would you have liked to have been with them if everything was available, contractual wise, and obviously mortality wise? Michelle, what would you have liked? What were your... it may not be even your favorite setups. It might just be ones that you would have been interested in. So what would you have preferred?
For this?
Yeah, for the 5 Doctors, if you were writing it and everybody was alive and available.
I see. Would definitely love to have with the first Doctor bring back the teachers. My brain.
Ian and Barbara.
Ian and Barbara, Jesus. Bring back Ian and Barbara along with Susan. See, second Doctor, Jamie.
Yeah.
Jamie and Zoe. Third Doctor, Doctor and Joe.
Yeah.
Fourth would be, of course, it have to be Tom and Liz.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and I think the 5th Doctor was well served with Tegan and Turlough.
Yeah. Now, Brian, any arguments with that? I mean,
I was bring back Harry too, just so they can call him ignoramus again.
Yeah,
well,
and the brig.
Right, go on then, Brian.
Oh, yeah, I'm almost with Michelle 100% on this. It's very difficult to be able to squeeze everybody in, but if we could, first Doctor and Susan, Ian and Barbara all together again. And as far as Patrick Troughton goes, I think him, Jamie, and Zoe would have been enough. The 3rd Doctor, I think a full unit reunion would have been great. Benton, Yates, the Brigadier, and it would have been nice if they did what they did in Mordrin Undead, would be to dye his hair black and give him that little black mustache just to make him look a little bit younger. I liked it when they did that in Mordrin Undead. So yeah, you would have the unit team. Tom would, of course, have Sarah. And I would like to see her, Caroline John. I would like to see her in there as well with Joe, because Caroline John, I know this is going to ruffle a few feathers, but I actually like her more than Joe. And I think it was one series was just not enough.
You see, this is what's interesting in a way with that question I'm asking, which is, does Terrence Dicks, if he could have, just go for the favorite pairings that you ever saw? So, for example, people assume it would have been Jon Pertwee and Katie Manning. Sarah's more appropriate for the Tom Baker Doctor. However, as you've just said, there's some pairings that never got a chance. So if you really did have the chance with the first Doctor, there's some really interesting pairings that just didn't get much of a go, and maybe now would be better, you know, and interesting. Hugh, what thoughts have you got, whether you're going for favourite pairings or some interesting ones?
I think I'm also looking at this in how you do it. So I think it works okay with just Susan with the first Doctor if it was written better. I think that's the problem with that. And I think them being pulled back together is good. The second Doctor, I'm fine with him just working with the Brigadier rather than anyone else. Third Doctor, I'd have Joel. Fourth Doctor, in terms of this, I'd have Leela. And Fifth Doctor, I would quite like him not to have had anyone at this stage in this.
Yeah. I mean, you know, in Kinder, Nyssa could have a headache, you know, so basically Turlough could have had a headache. Tegan could have done some...
any sorts of things. I mean, because you're having him pulled out of the sort of like the time zone, so I don't see why they had to pull them in, and I think that meant that there were lines that weren't really that necessary. I think it would have been better if he'd been meeting up with his previous companions and you got that detail, rather than having Tegan and Turlough in this.
Yeah, it's a funny one.
Sorry.
No, because Tegan and Turlough have just been in the whole series. So, yeah, I think you've got a good point there where you could edit 2 out. Although, yeah, who wants to miss out on this massive reunion, I suppose. But go on, Brian.
Well, I do know that Janet Fielding got the fur coat to wear in this one. No wonder, because it looked bloody freezing.
Yes. It was bloody freezing. They froze her. There, what's off filming this.
And regarding, I mean, the final criteria, and I'll just throw it in just so we've remembered before we get our judgments, is whether it engaged, was it good story writing, good resolution, or bits and bobs that were kind of not quite catching your eye. I always remember watching this in the northeast of England, and just as we're back in the TARDIS at the end, Look North, our regional news program, flashed up quickly for a second, and you were taken out of the story, and they flashed up the news.
Oh no!
They were waiting to come on, and then it flashed back again, a bit like Graham Norton shouting.
It's probably not quite as bad as Graham Norton, but there we go.
Yes. I got a Tegan and Turlough Terminus vibe in Five Doctors. Like, oh God, I was bored rigid. You know, like all they were doing was crawling around some ventilation shaft, and they were misserved in that story. And there was an element of that, you know, Turlough stuck in the TARDIS, chatting to somebody he's never met before. It's like one of those dodgy parties of family parties, and you're next to a relative you've never met before. You know, hello, you know, awkward. Yes, I'm disappointed with how Bruce was. Bruce was such a great character, and we've said this. It's such a shame to have done that to him. It really is. It kind of sticks in my throat.
Invasion of Time. He had such conviction and honor.
Yeah,
he was really, really good in that. I mean, he was loyal to the Time Lords right to the end, and then all of a sudden this happens.
I don't think it was easy. I think it's like one of those dramatic rules that you should do. You should never have shown Razalon. I don't think we should have seen him with the disco lights and all the rest of it. Like, oh no! Give us the price.
That big head thing was endemic around that stage. Yeah, sort of like that was obviously a special effect that had been perfected. So there was lots of that nightmare into the labyrinth.
Those disco lights reminded me of the megabyte modem in the Ultimate Four at the end when he opened the cupboard. It was like a stock cupboard at school, and there's this disco light, and you're going, "Oh, it's going to change the world." Yeah, the disco lights on poor Razalon then, and I just think you should never, ever, ever. It should be a golden rule in Doctor Who: don't show Razalon. There you go.
That would have been quite effective. Hearing that voice and them all looking up rather. Not terrified, but scared. That probably would have been a lot more effective.
So that's just moi. But it did engage. I just got slightly less engaged with the area that Hugh was talking about, the Time Lords. It's like, you know, discussing with Flavia, you know, the Fifth Doctor with Flavia walking around the water fountain, discussing life. You know, it's like, no, where's the Yeti? Where's the Dalek? Where's the Cyberman? Where's the Rastonori robot? Get me over there. But yes, we need the story to stick together. So our judgments are coming, and of course, you know the rule on this one. We judge on outstanding story overall using those 3 criteria. Good overall, requires some improvement, or special measures. I think so far we've had Power of the Doctors in special measures, Devil's Cords in special measures, and I think Rogue is definitely in special measures. So you know we can do the full whack. I can't call this outstanding as a story and all the rest of it, but that's not to diss it. I would call this one good. It's a good story. I enjoyed it. I'm so glad Terrence Dicks did it. I'm not taking anything away, but I would call it good overall because, I can't. I mean, I'm an English teacher. The adjective outstanding has a bit more to it. But that's me. So next, I'm going to ask Brian. Now, tee me up. Which one are you going for?
Thank goodness I'm on the same level as you this time. It was overall, good overall.
Good overall. So
it had some flaws, which is why I would say good overall. You know, it was a lot of fun, especially, like I said, I didn't even know it was going to be on television. I tuned in that night to see Doctor Who, and instead I got a 1.5 hour 5 Doctors movie, and it was just absolutely thrilling. They did that as well. I imagine for you it was all just omnibus one. Yeah, because now it's been broken up into 4 episodes, and they were some of the stupidest cliffhangers you would ever see. Oh, you've seen them too, Michelle?
Yeah.
I've seen it because in the United States, they vary on some of the free streaming sites. They'll put it on as the 4-parter. Yeah, it doesn't do well as a 4-parter. You got
Michelle, your judgment then, Michelle?
Oh, I'm going to be outstanding. It's just fun. It's fun. This is the episode I used to introduce Classic Who to people. So
I've got you as Hugh now. I've changed your sexy, but I apologize.
well.
I'm getting the wrong. Well, whatever. Yes, you've said outstanding though. Yes.
Yep.
That'll be an edit. But okay. And Hugh, just to finish off.
Another good. I think it is what it is. It's and similarly in that sense to the Planet of the Daleks. That it's not really that much of a criticism. And given what had to happen with the story and what Terrence Dicks had to do, it's quite amazing that it was at all as good as it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. The 5 Doctors, 25th of November, 1983. Some of us were there.
In the US 2 days early.
Yeah,
we did get it 2 days early.
On the anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can't remember about Canada, but
there's our judgment.
It aired at PBS 2 days early.
So
I think I saw mine on TV Ontario or PBS. Can't remember. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brendan.
No, so I was just wrapping up. So good overall for the 5 Doctors. Thanks to the team. It's been enjoyable to watch them again and just have lovely memories. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.